Take us back in 2016. So, what sparked you to start making content? And when you started, it was in the beginning as a slow fashion focused, or did you transit? I'm sorry. So, how was that?
So back in 2016, 17, like I kind of get the years a bit muddled up. I'm just going off my like fashion, my posts on my Instagram for like remembering things. But basically, I was sort of working in retail. I was working for COS, which is owned by H&M, but I've worked for like Cotton On and other fast fashion brands as well. And I was sort of like always interested in clothing, like, growing up a teenage girl, was like interested in shopping, clothing, that sort of thing. I'd done a little bit of secondhand shopping, but it wasn't really something I was passionate about or anything. I was going to the big box stores back in Tasmania, part of Australia. We only had a few stores there, so things like JJ's, Kmart, like, sort of low cost retailers. So they're all mostly fast fashion. But basically, watched a documentary called The Minimalist, which was those two guys, Josh and someone else. I forgot his name. And they were talking about minimalism, and I don't know, it just clicked. I don't know what it was about that, but it just clicked. And I watched the documentary again, and I was like, okay, this is starting to make more sense. Then I watched it again, like in the same day. I was like, wait, this just like really makes sense to me. And I was like looking around my apartment, and I was like, I have a lot of stuff, and it never felt like it always felt like I had to keep collecting to be the cool person. Like I had to have this and I had to have this to be the cool person.
Right.
And like back then, also, social media was still quite new. People hadn't quite, I guess there was people out there making money from it, but it was still really new and people were finding their way around things like Instagram and Facebook and that sort of thing. There was heaps of bloggers around though. People were blogging way before social media about their lifestyle and fashion. So I always want to be one of those people. But yeah, minimalism sort of started it, and then it sort of rolled into sort of zero waste, and then like having less, and like having less clothing, I guess, and then like veganism and vegetarianism. I sort of rolled into that, and I was like, every time I discovered a new rabbit hole to go down, it just sort of clicked. I was like, all right, slow fashion, that makes sense. Eating like, cleaner or less meat, or like, eating carefully, that makes sense. Having less things, that makes sense. Where does our stuff go? Where does it all come from? So I guess I just really taught myself all this sort of stuff just from this one movie. And I just really like to explore rabbit holes, apparently. So it just sort of happened. I really have no idea. And then I started talking about it. And I sort of found these communities online, and people were talking about it as well. And people spoke back to me about slow fashion. They're like, well, have you heard of this person doing cool things? I was like, no, I follow them or go meet them, all that sort of thing. So I guess it just grew organically from that, my passion from it.
Right.
I guess. Yeah.
No, that's wonderful. I mean, we all have a moment in our life when we get the spark that you talked about in the beginning. That, when it made us think that there is something that we should know, or it has to be that way. So the show that you mentioned, can you remember one thing from there that you thought about, or you think twice that, oh wow, they said something and it makes sense?
I think from the Minimalist documentary was like how they were sort of talking about how we're always consuming. Like we're always like, buy this thing and then you buy the next thing. Like you're always trying to keep up with somebody. And because social media was just starting, you were starting to see inside people's houses, or they were showing you what they bought, or like their collections of things. So you're like, oh, I should have that as well. To be a successful human, I should have all this sort of stuff. So
Right.
I think it was their message of like overall owning less, and like you actually don't really need that much. That really resonated with me and made me sort of think like I'd moved from one state to the next, and I dragged all this stuff with me, and I didn't even know what I had dragged with me. And then I was like, finding these random things that I had, and they had no meaning to me. So why did I have them? Like it just felt like it was a huge clutter on my head. So I guess like, the message of having less and consuming less really hit with me.
Yeah.
Um, I think that was the main thing that just started it all, to be honest.